Well, you're very welcome to this review of the Graduate Genetic Medicine program. I thought I'd start by sharing a little bit of history of our school. And the story starts with Cardinal Newman in the 19th century. This was the first site of the medical school. It was in Cecilia Street, it's on the top of Dame Street. And there's a plaque there if you look. So this is where Cardinal Newman founded the very successful medical school in the Catholic University of Ireland. He was actually finding it rather difficult to locate a premises for the school, but by good chance he happened upon this building, which had been used to train apothecaries, which is sort of an old-fashioned kind of pharmacist. And so it had a ready-built lecture theatre, and the success of the medical school, in fact, ensured the success of the Catholic University. It was actually extraordinarily successful. It moved location, and for a while was in Earlsford Terrace in this wing here, next to the National Concert Hall. This is where I studied medicine, and I have very fond memories of studying in Earlsford Terrace and with all the great bars and restaurants at hand in the city centre. There had been a plan, to unify with Trinity College and use the Ivy Gardens to have a single university. Never came to fruition. There was a brief spell in Marion Street in government buildings, and then a return to Terrace. But it wasn't until 2007 that for the first time in the history, we have a custom-built medical school. Because, as the history shows, the previous premises were not actually constructed for a bespoke medical school building. Earlsford Terrace was actually built to house the Great Exhibition. And this is a view of the library. It's a view of the beautiful library with the wooden beams here, which were difficult to procure and install. And this really now has become the student offices. We actually have 3 programs of medicine here. We have a 4-year course, a 5-year course, and a 6-year course. So this is where our typical CAO entry young students, 5-year course for international students with the right qualifications. These are the numbers as of 2022. That's the total. And you can see from the breakdown, 50-50 international versus EU versus non-EU. And as a point of interest, for EU places, there are 77 on the Graduate Medicine program. So the rest of the places are most commonly occupied by Canadians. That's the commonest country of origin for our students. And they have very diverse backgrounds. They can come from economics or law or literature. But there is a filter in place to make sure that they can handle the course, and that filter is the GAMSAT. We require at least a 2-1 degree. There's sufficient points in the GAMSAT to enter our program. And that varies according to the competition of the year. And if you see a score with an asterisk, it means that that number will be subject to lottery. So I'm in charge of the preclinical phase, which is the first 2 years of the program. An accelerated program. It is quite busy. So in year 1, we have lots of anatomy. And then we have these preclinical sciences, physiology, pathology, and so on. It's hidden a bit here, but we have patient-centered practice here. So even in week 1, we would like students to meet patient educators. In year 2, because it's systems-based, the anatomy continues, and we aim to have a particular logical sequence, because these are often taught in parallel, so that we would have structure, function, malfunction, treatment. So in other words, anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology. That's the logical sequence. As best we can. In year 2, we see the beginnings of the specialities in medicine: ophthalmology, ear, nose, and throat, obstetrics, and professional clinical practice. We have a successful patient education program, and I think Suzanne Donnelly will speak a lot more about this because she was a major force behind making this successful, and it continues to be successful. But in essence, we invite patients who have experience talking to students to enter at the appropriate stage. So we might have someone who has been suffering from rheumatological disorder, rheumatoid arthritis, should we say, for years, and telling the students what life is like battling that disease and how it progresses and the natural history of the disease, and the students can interact, and then we can realize why it's important to know about the anatomy of joints and so on. And it should be obvious, but I guess it acts as a stimulus to the learning of these important preclinical subjects. In more detail, here's the list of the modules. Human form is anatomy. It's a big 10-credit block. You see there, the size of the rectangle indicates the number of credits. It's a 10-credit block because it concerns the upper and lower limbs. These are the most dissectable parts of the human body, and it's the traditional place you start with education in anatomy. We have principles of biochemistry, immunology, and pharmacology. Very easy for those who have a background. You might have students who have PhDs in these subjects. Cell-cell communication is actually cellular physiology. It's physiology a bit small. Patient-centered practice, principles of microbiology, genetics, and this is cancer, neoplasia. And then in the next trimester, we have anatomy of the thorax, anatomy of the lungs and the heart. This is physiology then, cardiorespiratory function. That's a big 10-credit module. And here is the relevant disease and the pharmacology. We've got some microbiology there, and personal population health. This is run by our school of a different school actually within the College of Health Sciences. So here we have the patterns of disease epidemiology, and of course this has become very important since the pandemic. In year 2, we have gastrointestinal and genitourinary anatomy, and then we have physiology and disease and treatment of that. Then the endocrine system in health and disease, hematology and infections in the immunocompromised patient, and here we have an option. Now, there are no options or electives in the first year, and there is one here. So at present, we have expanded this a little bit. The kind of options we offer are principles of trauma, childhood. A new option looking at sonographic anatomy, introducing ultrasound in the teaching of living anatomy, stem cells in medicine. Another option on imaging, radiological matters. And there's a final option which is concerned with a summer student research award scheme. And so for those students who don't have a background in laboratory practice or experimental science, it's to be encouraged they take that option. And it can actually be performed in the summer of the first year, and it can be taken for credit so that you are relieved of the workload here, which is 5 credit. And one can then compete for the gold medal in this research award activity. And this activity seems to grow every year. Now we're way past 100 entrants in this, and it's open, of course, to the undergraduate medical students as well. So in the second trimester of stage 2, we have the nervous system in health and disease, anatomy of head, neck, and spine. So here we have ear, nose, and throat, ophthalmology, child health, reproductive, psychological issues, primary care, oncology, study of cancer, and rheumatology, study of the joints. And then we have, the summer is tuned into it, and then we have advanced clinical skills, which is a big 10-credit block. So this is preparing the students for the great transition that's going to happen from these preclinical block, which I'm in charge of, to the last two stages. You get into the hospitals, you start interacting with patients, and we anticipate you will be prepared for this, this great journey. And in fact, we had a white coat ceremony to celebrate the point of advancement around this stage here. If you've managed to successfully journey through those particular modules. So in the white coat ceremony, it's typically held in the O'Reilly Hall, and we invite relatives along, and each student is given a white coat by a member of the academic staff who fits them. And we take a group photo. And it's really there to mark that important transition from being a student of medicine to being a professional who is now going to be interacting with patients. And when you get into hospitals and you're wearing the appropriate garb, the patients can sometimes assume you're a doctor. And with graduate entry students, they're more mature. So it's very important that we have a good professional attitude when you enter the hospitals. Here's an example of one student competing in the Summer Student Research Award. This is an example of students we've created a 3D printed model of the upper airway, which could be used for intubation training. And here is the venue at the time where the competition was held. It's made to resemble the law court, so that the student must defend the project in front of their peers, and they're examined by a panel of judges. No pressure. Here are some parameters that indicate UCD is fairly active with research. Almost not in anatomy, I want only teaching, they're all research. This is also true in physiology. I'd like to say a few words about the topic of anatomy, because it's, of course, great concern to me. We devote specific donors to the graduate entry medicine program. These are different donors to the ones that are used in the undergraduate medicine program, because it transpires that the more mature students are more careful with dissection, and we needed to separate the two cohorts. Our donors are Irish citizens, usually, who've generously donated their bodies, both to education and research. And we share a plot in Glasnevin Cemetery with the other Dublin medical schools, Royal College of Surgeons, Trinity College. And every year the heads of anatomy get together in the Grave Days home and have a nice lunch. Where we talk about the upkeep of this plot, and we talk about how to keep our programs aligned. Now, RCSI does have a graduate entry medicine program. Unfortunately, Trinity isn't really ever offered that, which is a shame, I think. We have lots of models, which are the classic traditional way of teaching. I'm very interested in 3D printing, so we're moving into that area a lot. And we have a plastination facility. I think it's the only one in the country. And this is a process where you can take a prosected specimen and you treat it under vacuum so that you take out all the water, and slowly you replace the silicone until it becomes a hardened, plastinated specimen, which means you can handle it. It looks like a model, but it isn't a model, it's a real tissue, and it has to be inspected as a real piece of tissue, and inspecting anatomy only necessary here for our collection. So it's terribly good, for instance, for anatomy of the brain that you can see here. And you can see this specimen here actually with this deep sulci is an example of a dementia. We've also established clinical anatomy theatres in the Mater Hospital. So we have this satellite facility. So these are the theatres where I would have trained as an intern operator. So it's very strange for me to go back there. And now these are clinical anatomy theatres where we interact with surgeons. And just what the students think it's safe, and reappear in stage 3 and stage 4 for undergraduates. And we have revision courses. Well, anatomy is not difficult, it's just an awful lot of it. So you have to keep going over and over it. But the advantage of this facility is we've got all this beautiful operating equipment. You see, when they built the new Mater Hospital, they left all the equipment and they moved to the new facility. So there's all these ultrasound machines and marvelous equipment that we couldn't have here. But even better, we have access to all surgeons who come along and are too happy to help with the teaching of the students. And this year we've introduced sonographic anatomy. So we have these portable ultrasound devices that connect to smartphones. And there's artificial intelligence on top that will help compute, for instance, when we scan the bladder, which is there in minutes. And I've got a new module, as I mentioned, which is an option where we scan the body from head to toe and look at the images. And the students do this on their student peers. And this, to me, is a great advance. I think it may prove to be as significant as the opportunity to dissect. And the technology keeps getting better. Now, it's a pity that Zoom details in the way, but I have another project where I'm trying to couple 3D printing with the teaching through ultrasound, so that if we take, for instance, a model of the heart, and we can cut the heart in a particular section, we can print it. We can show what kind of view we're trying to emulate when we program the chest. So we have that particular cut. So it makes life a lot easier that you can see in 3D what you're trying to image in 2D, so that the code placement becomes faster and becomes more intuitive. So that's a brief whistle-stop overview of what's happening in anatomy. And there's a lot of action in all the other disciplines. Of course, I know my own discipline best. I know there's a lot of interesting things happening in physiology, and they're embracing molecular revolutions, and they have a lot of interesting practicals in that discipline as well. So I think UCD is attractive because we have a very modern medical school. We have research active staff. We have a very diverse student body. And I think we have very nice facilities. It's nice to be on campus after being isolated in the city centre for so many years. We are fully integrated now with our colleagues. And we have the anatomist in the vet school just 100 meters away.
My name's Katie, and I am one of the graduates of the GEM program in UCD. I graduated in June of this year, so I'm an intern based in the Mater Hospital as part of the UCD network. So I've been asked this evening to give you a quick talk on my perspective from the program. I have been in UCD for 8 years. I studied biomedical health and life sciences. I started in 2015 and then went on to do GEM. So I've been here a long time. So any questions you have, you feel free to ask. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a layout as to what I'll be chatting about. The first thing I'll talk about is deciding to study GEM. This is one of the things that I found most difficult. And then I'll chat a little bit about gaining the place, the preclinical years, the clinical years, a little bit about the career sort of trajectory and what that kind of looks like. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. I know Prof. Jones has gone through sort of like the course structure, and I'll touch on it as well, and I'm sure Prof. Donnelly will. But it's quite important to kind of have an overview as to what you're getting yourself into. So deciding to do it, to gem or to not to gem, you're all probably kind of, it's on your mind. Some of you are hell bent on it. Others are probably coming here just to kind of find out what it's about a little bit. Kind of, it's a huge commitment, and it's something that, as a graduate entry student, you've a lot more to consider than if you were an undergraduate student. I wrote a blog about 4.5 years ago, and the QR code is there, and it's on the UCD website, kind of outlining a little bit about what my thought processes were, and I'll chat a little bit about them here as well. One of the big things is you're committing yourself to 4 years of full-time education, and that education also extends into the summertime when you're doing optional research or electives. So it is a huge commitment, and it is 4 years of your life. And when you're, be it in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, whatever age that may be, it is a considerable amount of time. Also, a considerable amount of time not to be earning a full-time wage. And that's the other thing, the money. This is something that undergraduate students have the privilege of not worrying as much about. There has been huge controversy in recent years about the cost of the programme, and the fact that there is a dedicated Bank of Ireland loan has been suspended as of 2022. Simon Harris, the Minister of Higher Education, is aware, and as is the government. But just to kind of, I'm not giving out, but just that this is the reality, and it is important to be aware as to how you're going to fund it. And most people go to banks, which is what I did. The other thing is time and travel, and you're committing yourself to Dublin or wherever it is in the country. But in this case, if you come to UCD, you're committing yourself to Dublin for 4 years. There are opportunities to travel and do electives, and that is amazing. And it's a wonderful opportunity, but you are committing yourself to being here. So, you know, it is sacrificing a good chunk of if you're in your 20s, not being able to travel as much or work abroad in that space of time. The other thing is aptitude. In my head, no one in my family was medical. Medicine always seemed like this kind of very distant thing on the horizon. That's something I didn't think I'd necessarily be able to achieve, even though I loved academics. So there's this perception that to do medicine, you have to be exceptionally intelligent. And whilst that is true, there are other qualities that you need. Part of the job, and obviously it depends on what stream of medicine you go into in your career, it involves working with people. As an intern in the hospital, you're communicating with people every single day. And that seems to be a huge chunk of what the NCHDs do in the hospital, is communicating and relaying information and making sure everyone's on the same page, and also communicating with patients and their families. So gaining a place. So you apply via the CAO if you're an Irish or EU applicant, and it's the same sort of system as you did when you were finishing your leaving cert and going through the CAO and putting down your list of options as to where you want to study. The requirement for graduate entry medicine is a minimum 2-1 in a level 8 degree. And that can be any discipline. And that's the wonderful thing about the graduate entry medicine program, is that you have people from all different disciplines coming together. In my year, we had a music teacher that studied in Oxford and taught in New Zealand. We had a graduate of law with French from Trinity. We had a journalist. We had loads of engineers, as Prof. Jones was saying, loads of engineers come along and study medicine. And to gain a place, you need to sit the GAMSAT, which you're all probably aware of, but it's essentially an aptitude test. It's quite a long aptitude test consisting of your comprehension abilities, your essay writing skills in a personal essay type situation, and then scientific knowledge at the very end. And this kind of table gives you a little bit of outline of how the points kind of fluctuate and kind of not, to be honest, every year. That kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what you're aiming for if you want to come to UCD. Other universities, the GAMSAT score can fluctuate a little bit. As an Irish or EU applicant, you don't have to do an interview, which is kind of nice. Whereas those from Canada or the United States do have to do interviews, and it is a slightly different application process. So you're aware that GAMSAT sits in September and March of each year, and it is valid for 2 years. So, for example, if you are in your final year of your degree and you want to sit the GAMSAT in March, it'll still be valid 2 years later for your application. Kind of good to know just in terms of prep. And this just touches on the Bank of Ireland loan scheme that was scrapped. And just so that you're aware that that is no longer an option. So if you're reading some material online, this loan doesn't exist anymore. So a little bit about some of the core skills that you get during the degree. It's 4 years, and it is 4 mad, wonderful years that you make very good friends in through the, I don't know if you want to call it traumatic bonding, but it's quite fun at the same time. So in the first year, you very much build on your basic biomedical scientific knowledge. Now, depending on what your background is, this is going to differ for a lot of people. In that first semester, it really is touching on those core scientific modules such as biochemistry, and you do physiology and anatomy. Everyone brushes up on their anatomy very well for Prof. Jones's modules. And then the nice thing about the GEM program is that there are clinical skills that are integrated from that very first semester. So you get patient educators that come in and chat to you from kind of the very first week, which is really lovely because it very much feels like you are already involved and you kind of have an idea as to where you want to go and getting a little taste of medicine along the way. Professionalism is a huge thing. Now, depending on where your background is, you could be a nurse, a physiotherapist, paramedic, whatever your background is. You need professionalism every day, no matter what the job, but especially when you're dealing with vulnerable people in difficult situations. It's exceptionally important that you are professional with your colleagues and those you are treating. And also because of that image of what medicine is, it's, people trust doctors. So it's very important to show that, and you get taught how to do it. And Prof. Donnelly will go into it a little bit more afterwards. And communication. So when I heard somebody asking about the exams and the clinical years, you do OSCEs after your medical and surgical rotations, and there's always a communication station in those OSCEs. So you're given a situation and there's a patient actor in front of you and you have to tell them bad news, and it's all about how you communicate. So that is very important, and it's what you're graded on as well, not just the clinical skills and your scientific knowledge. You've already seen this. It gives you a breakdown of what the program is year by year. So you can see that it's very much heavy book learning in the first year. And then you get into your systems and you go into your GI and your cardiac and your ENT and oncology and hematology, and is really, really interesting. And then the last 2 are clinical. So this gives you a little bit more of a sort of broken down view on the program. And the first year, it's book learning. As I said before, there is some clinical education in there. And then the second year and that first semester, where it's the GI and GU systems, is kind of lauded to be the hardest in the sense that there is a lot of credits going for it. And there is a lot of learning and exams. The one thing I will say about UCD is that the students are good to each other. We have Google Drives that are passed down year on year on year as to find resources, what's good, what's not good to look for, and past exam questions that we've worked out. So it is very much that we have custody of this information and we do hand it on year. And people find it very beneficial, and to know that, your colleagues or your peers are there for support. So especially in that first year, when people are coming from very different disciplines, to know that, for the most part, people are good and they will help you. And the second semester of the year 2 is your neurophysiology and ear, nose and throat, and you get a module introducing you to pediatrics, psychiatry and obstetric and gynecology, and you just touch on those because you're gearing up to go into clinical placement, and the UCD very much want to ensure that you have a broad overview as to all the specialties in medicine. And then you go into what's called baby res, which is May of year 2, where it's 4 weeks of clinical placement without any other medical students in the hospital. So normally they'd be undergraduate students, but for this time it's just GEM students. And our teaching hospitals are the Mater and St. Vincent's. One of the reasons I chose UCD for GEM wasn't necessarily because I did my undergraduate degree here, but because of the affiliated teaching hospitals. The Mater is the cardiothoracic base of the country. It's also a major trauma centre. Vincent's is known for its liver services. And the Cystic Fibrosis Centre is based in Vincent's as well. They're both excellent teaching hospitals. And I was a student in Vincent's, and I'm an intern in the Mater, and both are really good, and there's a great sense of community in both. In baby res, you have 2 weeks of medicine and 2 weeks of surgery, so you're very much kind of thrown into the deep end and kind of get a little quick taste as to what both of those specialties kind of are and what they entail. As students, you get to go into theatre, you get to scrub in on cases, you can go to clinic, you can take histories, chat to patients, and you kind of have that kind of freedom to find your feet a little bit in those first 4 weeks before the summer. And in that, you have a good chunk of time in between the third your second and third year. And a lot of people use that time to do research if possible. And I know people are strapped to try and work at the same time as well, but there is a dedicated research program here. And any of you that are in any of the sciences here know that the Summer Student Researchers Awards are a big thing. And you can get a poster out of that, and you could even get involved in writing a paper. And that is very beneficial. I know kind of at the time you're thinking, I'm doing another degree. What more do you want from me? But when you're working and you're trying to apply for training schemes and different posts, one of the things that interviewers and people that are deciding who gets what job will always look at is your research output and what you've gotten involved in. And so, you can get involved in research in the hospital as well. If there's a consultant or any professor, even in UCD, that you would really like to work with, or you like their area of interest, people are more than happy to respond to an email when people reach out and show enthusiasm. Then in your clinical years, the res year, it's residence year. It goes back to the time when students were actually residents of the hospital. They used to stay there or very close by. And this goes on from September to July. So in the first semester of year 3, you do 6 weeks of medicine and 6 weeks of surgery. And that is followed up with exams. And the exams are written papers, MCQ style. Short answer questions and OSCEs, as I said before, and they get patients for those OSCEs. Those OSCEs happen in the hospital with real patients and patient actors for communication stations. And then you have a break for Christmas where you do a forensic and legal medicine for 3 weeks on campus. So it's kind of nice because bear in mind, people are split in two, the year is split in two, and you go to the Mater or Vincent's and you can pick, you have a preference, and you're also mixing with the undergraduate students as well. So there's lots of new people and it's kind of a really nice time. And UCD provide like dedicated surgical handbooks from which to learn. So you're on placement every day. It depends what rotation you're on. If you're on surgery, like colorectal surgery, you will have to be on the ward at 7 a.m. And then there are lectures generally from 4 to 6 in the evening. So they are really long days, but you have time to study in between. And the emphasis is on taking histories and trying to look for clinical signs. And then after Christmas, you do another 6 weeks of medicine, another 6 weeks of surgery. And you're also sent to peripheral hospitals as well. It's not just Vincent's and the Mater. You could be sent to Mullingar for 3 weeks. You could be sent to Wexford Hospital, and you'll start to affectionately kind of categorize those hospitals based on how good the canteen is. And there's a dedicated Instagram page if anyone wants to look it up for medical students and the different food that's provided in different hospitals and rated and reviewed. And that brings you up to April. So when you finish your medicine and your surgery exams and their completion at the end of March, you'll then start into the specialty modules. And those specialties are kind of are outlined down below. They're GP and medicine for the elderly, psychiatry, pediatrics, obstetrics and gynecology. And all of those modules are staggered. So you'll be in a cohort and you'll be going through each of those modules together. And then once you complete 2 of those, that'll bring you up to July. And that's when you have finished a very, very long year, but you need to do electives. And electives are placements that you have the freedom to choose. And there are loads of elective opportunities abroad. Some are linked with the UCD School of Medicine. So we have connections with the University of Kansas and UCLA, to just name 2. There's also a U21 program, which is a European-wide program, and certain universities are on at different years. You can go to Sweden or Edinburgh, the UK or Australia. And then for those that achieve the highest marks, they get the opportunity to do an elective as a sort of sub-internship in the University of Pennsylvania in the January to February of the final year. So there are opportunities to go away if you can do that. And if there are grants as well, and to help a little bit along the way as well. And then in the very final year, you finish off your specialty modules, and that brings you up to November. And the specialty modules, just to say, the connections are with Temple Street, Crumlin, the Coombe for obstetrics, and Holles Street. And for psychiatry, there are different psychiatry units across the city affiliated with the hospitals and with community centres as well. And then where are we now? We're in the final semester of the final year, and it's very much about brushing up on the professional skills that you need to have to work as a doctor, learning how to do different skills like catheterizing, taking bloods, cannulating people, inserting nasogastric tubes. All of that you kind of need to be proficient at. And here's just a picture of some of the hospitals that we are blessed to be able to study and learn in. Up there is Holles Street one morning last year, and the picture below is one of our very last lectures in the lecture theatre in St. Vincent's with Prof. Donal O'Shea. And then the other picture is from the study room in the Mater, which is really beautiful. I'm very privileged to be able to study in such places. And that was us on the very last day. We completed our final long case. So our very last exam is we're brought into a patient that we don't know, and we're left with them for 40 minutes, and we have to take as much of a comprehensive history and examine them as best we can without any medical notes or anything with us. We're relying on our clinical history taking skills and the patient's awareness as to what is going on and your examination findings. And that was us the very last day. And then you apply to jobs, and it's sort of similar to like applying for the SEAO. You list your jobs and you rank them as you prefer. And I am one of the interns in the Mater at the moment, and that's on the steps of the Mater. One of the great things about UCD is that there's lots of opportunities to learn. There are societies to join that you can actually help with your studies. The Emergency Medicine Society is great for knowing how to respond in different clinical situations, and there's a competition, and there's also opportunities to teach. This was one of our evenings with the Emergency Medicine Society, and we did it in Holles Street with the focus on obstetric emergencies, and we can learn how to suture. You do that in your OSCEs anyway. That's part of one of the skills you need to be able to do to be able to suture, and you're examined on it. How you respond to a cardiac arrest, and we create simulations, so people have to work together to try and figure out what is wrong with the patient, which is very much what happens in real life. And there's also opportunities to get involved in competitions as well. The Sim Wars competition and UCD did very well this year, and it's very much reinforces the learning that you're doing in university. Just a little touch on what the career trajectory looks like. Because I know we chatted a lot about what the course is, and while that's all very fine and good, we want to know what you're going to get at the end of it. And there are numerous different pathways that you can go down, and numerous different specialties. And I have a quick slide on the different specialties that you can just touch on. But you do your medical degree. In our case, it's 4 years, not 6. And then you progress on to your intern year, which is one year to get your full medical license, and then you can go wherever the hell you want to go. A lot of people will go to Australia. A lot of the undergraduate students will. And in all fairness, a good few of the GEMs are this year. And then what you need to decide is, what do you want to do? And that can be a hard one to figure out. Do you want to go and do GP? In that case, it's 4 years after you do your intern year, and then you are a fully fledged, fully grown GP. If you want to do hospital medicine, you do a basic specialist training program, which is 2 years, query 3, depending on what the Royal College of Physicians decide shortly. And that you do 2 years rotating every 3 months in different medical specialties. Ireland unlike a lot of the North American residency programs, wants a good general doctor. So you rotate through, if you want to do medicine, you will rotate to core medical specialties such as nephrology, GI, neurology, medicine for the elderly. And if you want to do surgery, then you do the core surgical training program, and that is 2 years. And then you can take a year out, you can do standalone jobs. And if you want to progress to be a registrar on a scheme, you go higher specialist training. And that can last between 4 to 6 years, depending on if you do a fellowship or research in between. And then some people progress to a fellowship, which is what you need to, and a lot of people go abroad for that. And then you can be considered for consultancy positions. But it's a long road. But it's the being a consultant or the highest paid specialty at the end of it isn't the goal. You're getting paid through all of this. And, it's part of your job. It's part of the wonderful thing in medicine is that there is so much career progression. And that is a really, really wonderful thing. And you always feel like you're striving towards something, which is not what every other profession has. And we're very fortunate to be able to have that to aspire to the entire time. This basic, just the different specialties that exist in the career. You can do internal medicine, and that encompasses so much. You can encompass gastroenterology, as I said, nephrology, hepatobiliary medicine, medicine for the elderly, endocrinology. That's all internal medicine, hospital-based medicine. You can do obstetrics and gynecology. That's a scheme in of itself. Pediatrics, a scheme in of itself. Pathology. So if you want to work in a lab, pathology is a good one to go for. Also, bear in mind, who does autopsies? Who is the state pathologist? They are doctors, and they did pathology. Psychiatry, anesthetics, surgery, and the various specialties in surgery exist within that. GP, public health, and we're all kind of familiar about what public health doctors do after the pandemic, and radiology. So those that look at scans and will report on scans and tell general medics what is on the scan, because not every doctor can read a CT in exceptional detail to be able to diagnose whatever mass or tumor that might be there. And the other thing to bear in mind is that, it's a long road, and, the people that are attracted to medicine are generally people that can be exceptionally hard on themselves, and to always acknowledge doing a little bit and often is really, really important. I know when I was applying to medicine, doing the GAMSAT in of itself was a huge thing to do and a huge thing to achieve. And then, doing every single exam and every semester, each single time you're achieving something. And it is very much about taking it one step at a time and not thinking about, when am I going to become a consultant? Because that's not life. Life is all the little bits in between and, doing it bit by bit. Does anybody have any questions at all?